The Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed like a beehive on the brink of collapse that fateful morning. The air crackled with tension. Security systems had crashed an hour earlier, leaving lines of bleary-eyed travelers snaking through the terminal, their voices a chaotic symphony of frustration and fatigue. Overhead, garbled announcements fought to be heard over the clamor, warning of a storm barreling toward the city, its dark clouds already smudging the horizon. Flights teetered on the edge of cancellation, and every second felt like a countdown to disaster. Amid this swirling pandemonium, one woman moved with quiet purpose, her steps steady against the tide of chaos. Her name was Lena Harper, a 42-year-old black woman with sharp eyes and an unassuming air, dressed in faded jeans and a simple sweater that gave no hint of the power she wielded. To the world, she was just another passenger desperate to catch a flight. But beneath that modest exterior burned a secret that could turn this airport upside down. Lena Harper was the CEO of Horizon Air, and she was here incognito to see if her airline truly lived up to its promise. Lena clutched her boarding pass for Horizon Air Flight 192 to Chicago, her heart ticking like a metronome as she wove through the crowd toward Gate B19. She'd done this dozens of times, booked under a fake name, stripped of any corporate sheen, blending in to test her staff, to feel what her passengers felt. Today was no different, or so she thought. The storm outside mirrored the storm brewing within her industry. Complaints of rude gate agents, overworked crews, and a nagging suspicion that not every traveler was treated equally. She needed answers, raw and unfiltered, and there was no better way than slipping into the fray herself. Her short, natural curls bounced lightly as she adjusted her backpack, her gaze flicking to the gate ahead. The clock above read 7:42 a.m. 18 minutes until boarding. She could make it. She had to make it. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Beyond the sea of shuffling bodies, a figure loomed like a predator stalking prey. Vincent Crowe, 38 years old and freshly promoted to airport security officer, cut an imposing silhouette at 6'1". His pressed uniform stretched tight over a frame hardened by years of restless ambition. His dark eyes darted across the terminal, a hawk hunting for trouble. Vincent was a man on edge, too much coffee, too little sleep, and a chip on his shoulder the size of Georgia. Just days ago, a smuggling bust had slipped through his fingers, earning him a tongue-lashing from his captain and a burning need to prove himself. That morning, a vague tip crackled through his radio. Female, black, possibly carrying contraband on Flight 192. Watch the gates. No name, no description. Just enough to light a fuse in Vincent's already simmering mind. To him, it wasn't just a tip, it was a challenge, a chance to reclaim his pride. And when his gaze landed on Lena Harper, moving calmly through the chaos, something in him snapped. She didn't fit his picture of a panicked traveler. No frantic glances, no fumbling with luggage, just a steady stride and a quiet confidence that, to Vincent, screamed suspicious. His pulse quickened, a hunter's instinct kicking in. Too calm, he thought, his lips curling into a faint sneer. People like her always think they can slip by. He adjusted the radio on his shoulder, his boots thudding against the tiled floor as he closed the distance. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing the authority in his stride, but Lena didn't notice him, not yet. She was too focused on the gate, on the flickering sign that read Chicago O'Hare on time. A rare glimmer of hope in the morning's madness. Vincent reached Gate B19 just as Lena stepped into the boarding line, her boarding pass already in hand. The air around the gate was thick with impatience. Babies wailed. A businessman barked into his phone, and the gate agent, a frazzled young woman named Tara, struggled to keep up. Lena offered Tara a small, encouraging smile as she handed over her pass, a gesture that went unnoticed by most but not by Vincent. He saw it, and it fueled his hunch. Too nice, too composed, hiding something. He pushed forward, cutting through the line with the subtlety of a bulldozer, and planted himself squarely in Lena's path. His voice boomed, sharp and commanding, slicing through the terminal's din like a blade. "Stop right there," he barked, his hand shooting out to block her. "Ticket and I'd now." Lena froze, her breath catching as every eye in the gate area swiveled toward her. The businessman paused mid-sentence. The crying baby hushed for a split second, and Tara's hand stilled on her scanner. Vincent towered over Lena, his glare boring into her like he could peel back her skin and find the guilt he was certain lurked beneath. She met his stare, her expression calm but her mind racing. What's this about? She wondered, though a familiar pang told her she already knew. She'd felt that look before, the weight of suspicion that came not from evidence, but from the color of her skin. Slowly, she reached into her pocket, producing her boarding pass and driver's license, her fingers steady despite the heat rising in her chest. "Here," she said, her voice even, almost gentle. "Is there a problem, officer?" Vincent snatched the documents with a grunt, his thick fingers flipping them over as if they were contraband themselves. He squinted at the name Lena Brooks, a pseudonym she'd used for months on these undercover trips. The boarding pass was legit, the ID pristine, but that only stoked his fire. "No problem yet," he muttered, his tone dripping with menace. Then, in a move that stunned the crowd, he gripped her boarding pass and tore it clean in half, the ripping sound echoing like a gunshot. Gasps rippled through the line. A woman clutched her child closer, and someone fumbled for their phone, the faint click of a camera shutter cutting through the silence. "You're not boarding," Vincent declared, tossing the shredded pieces to the floor. "Not until I say so." Lena's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance igniting behind her calm facade. She opened her mouth to protest, but Vincent cut her off, stepping closer, his voice lowering to a growl only she could hear. "Don't play games with me. I know your type think you can waltz through here like you own the place. Open that bag, or I'll do it for you." The terminal seemed to hold its breath, the storm outside rumbling closer as if nature itself sensed the brewing clash. Lena stood her ground, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. She had no idea that this moment Vincent's reckless arrogance crashing against her quiet strength would spark a chain reaction, a showdown that would spiral far beyond this crowded gate. The pieces of her torn ticket lay scattered at her feet, a silent challenge, and the eyes of strangers bore into her, waiting for what came next. Little did they know, least of all Vincent Crowe, that the woman he'd just humiliated held the power to bring his world crashing down. The air at Gate B19 thickened with unease as Vincent Crowe loomed over Lena Harper, his shadow swallowing the scattered remains of her torn boarding pass. The crowd around them held a collective breath, a mix of shock and morbid curiosity flickering in their eyes. Phones were out now, lenses glinting like tiny spotlights, capturing every second of the standoff. Lena's backpack hung heavy on her shoulder, but her posture remained unyielding, spine straight, chin lifted, a quiet fortress against Vincent's storm of aggression. She could feel the heat of his glare, the unspoken accusation that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with the skin she lived in. Her voice, when it came, was low but razor-sharp, cutting through the murmurs like a blade through silk. "My bag's right here, officer. Go ahead and look. But you won't find what you're hoping for." Vincent's lips twitched into a smirk, a predator savoring the chase. He grabbed the backpack from her without a word, unzipping it with a ferocity that sent a pen skittering across the floor. Clothes spilled out, folded jeans, a soft gray shirt followed by an iPad, a small toiletry pouch and a thin stack of papers. He rifled through them, his thick fingers crumpling the edges, his breath quickening with each unremarkable discovery. The papers caught his eye: flight schedules, some scribbled notes about boarding procedures, but they bore no logo, no hint of Horizon Air. To him, they were just another puzzle piece in a picture he'd already painted. "She's hiding something big." He tossed the bag back at her feet, the thud echoing in the stunned silence. "Nothing yet," he growled, stepping closer, his voice dripping with menace. "But I'm not done with you. You're not boarding until I say so." Lena's pulse thrummed in her ears, but she refused to flinch. She'd faced this before, men like Vincent, armed with badges and biases, turning nothing into something because they couldn't see past their own assumptions. She opened her mouth to respond, but a new voice broke through the tension, shaky yet firm. "Officer, please, cleared to board." It was Tara, the gate agent, her hands trembling as she clutched her scanner. She'd watched the scene unfold, her stomach twisting with every second of Vincent's overreach. "Her pass checked out before this. She's good to go." Vincent wheeled on Tara, his eyes narrowing to slits. "You questioning me, huh? I'm the one keeping this place safe, not you. Step back and do your job or I'll have you written up." Tara flinched, her resolve wavering, but she didn't retreat. She glanced at Lena, a silent apology in her wide eyes, then spoke into her headset, her voice barely audible. I need a supervisor at B19. Now. The word supervisor hit Vincent like a spark to dry grass. His jaw clenched, his fists balling at his sides. He wasn't about to let some gate agent undermine him, not today. Not with his pride already bruised from that smuggling fiasco. He turned back to Lena, his tone icy. You think you're slick, don't you? Stay right there. We're not finished. But time wasn't on his side. The overhead speaker crackled to life, Tara's voice now amplified for all to hear. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final boarding call for Horizon Air Flight 192 to Chicago O'Hare. All remaining passengers, please proceed to the gate immediately. The announcement jolted the crowd into motion, a wave of bodies surging forward, drowning Vincent's authority in a sea of impatience. Lena saw her chance. She scooped up her bag, sidestepped Vincent with the grace of a dancer, and handed Tara her ID again. Tara scanned it. Bipan nodded, her hands shaking as she waved Lena through. Go, Tara whispered, casting a nervous glance at Vincent. Quick. Lena didn't hesitate. She slipped down the jet bridge, her heart hammering as the roar of the terminal faded behind her. Vincent's shout, "Hey! Get back here!" chased her, but the tide of boarding passengers blocked his path. He shoved forward, elbowing a man aside, but by the time he reached the gate, the door was swinging shut. Tara stood firm, her arms crossed. A supervisor now at her side, a stern-faced woman who eyed Vincent with disapproval. She's gone, officer, the supervisor said coolly. And unless you've got a warrant, you're done here. Vincent's face flushed crimson, a vein pulsing at his temple. He slammed a fist against the podium, the sound reverberating like thunder. This isn't over, he snarled, storming off, his mind already racing with a reckless plan. He'd seen her board Horizon Air Flight 192. He knew where she was headed, and he wasn't about to let her slip away, not when his gut screamed she was trouble, evidence be damned. He grabbed his radio, barking into it as he strode toward the security office. Get me on that plane. Now. Tell the crew we've got a potential threat. Meanwhile, Lena settled into seat 3A in business class, her window offering a view of the tarmac where planes jostled under the darkening sky. She exhaled, letting the plush leather cradle her tense frame. The torn boarding pass was a memory now replaced by a digital scan, but Vincent's aggression lingered like a bad taste. She unzipped her bag, pulling out her iPad to jot notes. Gate staff overwhelmed but professional. Security overreach needs addressing. This was why she did this, why she traded boardrooms for boarding lines. Horizon Air was her baby, built from scratch with a promise of fairness and dignity for every passenger. She couldn't fix what she didn't see, and today she'd seen plenty. The cabin door sealed with a heavy thunk, and the engines hummed to life. Lena allowed herself a flicker of relief. She was airborne soon, out of Vincent's reach, or so she thought. The safety demo began, flight attendants gliding down the aisle, but a ripple of unease stirred at the front of the plane. Whispers passed between the crew, heads turning toward the galley. Lena frowned, her instincts prickling. Something was off. She didn't know it yet, but Vincent Crowe had pulled strings he had no right to pull. With a mix of bluster and half-truths, he'd convinced the captain that a high-risk passenger warranted his presence on the flight. As the plane taxied toward the runway, a figure emerged from the shadows of the forward cabin. Vincent, his uniform crisp, his eyes locked on Lena like a missile finding its target. The storm outside roared louder, but it was nothing compared to the tempest about to erupt at 30,000 feet. Lena's secret was still safe, tucked beneath her unassuming exterior, but Vincent was closing in, driven by a prejudice that blinded him to the truth and a desperation that would soon plunge them all into chaos. The hum of Horizon Air Flight 192's engines vibrated through the cabin as the plane climbed into the bruised Atlanta sky, the storm below flashing with jagged streaks of lightning. Lena Harper leaned back in seat 3A, her fingers tracing the edge of her iPad, her mind still replaying the clash at gate B19. Vincent Crowe's sneering face lingered like a ghost, his baseless accusations a bitter echo she couldn't shake. She forced herself to focus: staff evaluation, service glitches, security protocol, scribbling notes to keep her grounded. The cabin lights dimmed and a flight attendant, a young woman named Carla with a warm smile, approached with a tray. "Orange juice or water, ma'am?" she asked, her voice a soft balm against the morning's chaos. "Water, please," Lena replied, offering a nod of thanks. She took the cup, the cool plastic grounding her as she sipped. For a moment the flight felt normal routine even. The seatbelt sign blinked off and passengers around her relaxed, flipping open laptops or rustling through carry-ons. Lena glanced out the window, the city shrinking into a patchwork of lights beneath the swirling clouds. She loved this part, the ascent, the promise of escape. But that fleeting calm shattered like glass when a shadow fell across her tray table. Vincent Crowe stood in the aisle, his uniform crisp, his presence a violation of the plane's fragile peace. His boots thudded against the carpet, each step a declaration of intent. Lena's breath caught, her eyes snapping up to meet his. He wasn't supposed to be her. Officer belonged on a flight without cause, not like this. Around her, heads turned, a ripple of confusion spreading through business class. Carla froze mid-step, her tray wobbling, while a man across the aisle lowered his newspaper, his brow furrowing. Vincent's lips curled into a grim smile, his radio crackling faintly at his hip as he loomed over Lena. "Thought you could run, huh?" he said, his voice loud enough to carry a taunt wrapped in authority. "Not on my watch. Stand up now." Lena's heart slammed against her ribs, but her face remained a mask of composure. She set her water down deliberately, her movements slow, buying time to process the absurdity of it all. "Officer," she said, her tone icy but controlled. "You're on a plane, not a precinct. What's this about?" Vincent leaned in, his breath hot and sharp. "It's about you thinking you're above the law. I told you I wasn't done. Get up or I'll drag you up myself." His hand hovered near his belt, not a gun, not here, but the threat was clear. The cabin erupted in whispers, a woman clutching her armrest, a teenage boy pulling out his phone with trembling hands. Click. The recording began. Carla stepped forward, her voice quavering. "Sir, this isn't protocol. I need to get the captain. Stay out of this." Vincent snapped, whirling on her. "Tell your captain we've got a suspect on board. Move." Carla hesitated, then darted toward the galley, her footsteps quick and uneven. Lena rose slowly, not because Vincent demanded it, but because she refused to cower. She stood eye to eye with him, her 5'7" frame radiating a quiet defiance that made his bravado falter just for a second. "You're making a mistake," she said, her words a warning wrapped in velvet. "You have no idea who I am." Vincent laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Oh, I'll find out. Hands where I can see them, open that bag again. Now." He gestured to her backpack still stowed overhead. The absurdity of a mid-flight search, no warrant, no cause struck Lena like a slap, but she complied, unzipping the bag with deliberate calm. Clothes, iPad, papers, nothing new, nothing damning. Vincent shoved past her, rifling through it with a fury that sent a sock tumbling into the aisle. Passengers gasped, a woman muttering, "This is insane," as the teenage boy's phone stayed trained on the scene. Then it happened. A voice cut through the chaos, sharp and incredulous. "Wait, holy crap, I know her." It was the man across the aisle, his newspaper now crumpled in his lap. He jabbed a finger at Lena, his eyes wide with recognition. "She's the CEO of Horizon Air. I saw her in a trade mag last year." "Lena something. What the hell's this guy doing?" The words detonated like a bomb. The cabin exploded in noise, shouts, gasps, a child's cry. Vincent froze, his hands buried in Lena's bag, his face a mask of disbelief. "CEO," he scoffed, but his voice cracked, uncertainty creeping in. "Don't feed me that crap. No. I'm Lena Harper," she said, her voice rising for the first time, steady and commanding. "And you're harassing the head of this airline on a flight I own. Back off or you'll regret it." She pulled her phone from her pocket, her thumb hovering over the screen. "One call, and your career's over." Vincent's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. But his pride, his stubborn, reckless pride wouldn't let him yield. "Nice try," he sneered, grabbing her wrist to stop her. "You're not calling anyone until I say so. Sit down and shut up." The teenage boy's camera caught it all, the grab, the defiance, the escalating madness. Passengers surged to their feet, a chorus of protests drowning Vincent's orders. "Get off her. This is nuts, let her go. Somebody stop him." Carla burst back into the cabin, The captain trailing behind Hera, grizzled man in his 50s, his face a storm of fury. "What in God's name is going on here?" he roared, his voice cutting through the uproar. Vincent straightened, releasing Lena's wrist, but his stance remained defiant. "Captain, I've got a suspect possible contraband," he said, his words rushed, desperate. "She's been evasive since the gate." "She's the damn CEO," the newspaperman shouted, waving his arms. "Check her eye, she runs this airline." The captain's eyes darted to Lena, then back to Vincent, his jaw tightening. "You boarded my plane for this? With no evidence?" He grabbed his radio, barking into it. "Ground control, we've got a situation requesting emergency landing at the nearest strip. This ends now." The plane lurched as turbulence hit, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within. Vincent staggered, his bravado crumbling as the reality sank into dozens of witnesses. A viral video in the making, and a woman who might actually be who she claimed. Lena sat back down, her phone now alive in her hands, texting her assistant Naomi Evans. "Onboard troubles and proof of my ID to O'Hare and the FAA. Urgent." She looked up at Vincent, her gaze a blade of steel. "You wanted to know who I am," she said, her voice low and lethal. "You're about to find out." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an onboard incident, we're diverting for an emergency landing. Please remain seated." Panic rippled through the cabin, but Lena stayed calm, her secret teetering on the edge of exposure. Vincent slumped against the bulkhead, sweat beading on his forehead, his world unraveling with every passing second. The plane banked sharply, descending toward a small airstrip in Tennessee, the storm howling outside as if cheering the reckoning to come. Lena's truth was moments away from bursting free, and Vincent's fate was about to crash harder than the lightning splitting the sky. The screech of Horizon Air Flight 192's tires kissing the tarmac jolted the cabin, a harsh punctuation to the chaos that had unfolded at 30,000 feet. Rain lashed the small Tennessee airstrip, a wind-swept nowhere hemmed in by dark pines, the storm's fury painting the windows with streaks of water. Inside, the air buzzed with adrenaline. Passengers clutched armrests, their voices a tangle of outrage and disbelief. Lena Harper sat steady in seat 3A, her phone glowing with a reply from Naomi Evans. "Doc sent FAA notified. Hang tight, boss." Her lips pressed into a thin line, her calm exterior masking a fire that had been stoked by Vincent Crowe's relentless prejudice. She glanced across the aisle where the teenage boy still gripped his phone, the video now a ticking time bomb ready to explode online. Vincent slumped against the galley wall, his uniform damp with sweat, his bravado leaking away like air from a punctured tire. The captain's glare pinned him in place, a silent promise of consequences, but Vincent's eyes stayed locked on Lena, confusion warring with defiance. He'd gambled everything on his gut, and now the stakes were crashing down around him. The cabin door hissed open, admitting a blast of wet wind and three figures. Two local sheriff's deputies in slickers and a wiry airstrip manager clutching a clipboard, his face pinched with irritation. "Who's in charge here?" the manager barked, his voice cutting through the din. The captain stepped forward, his jaw tight. "I am. We've got an officer who boarded without clearance, disrupted my flight, and assaulted a passenger. That's her, the one he's after." He nodded toward Lena, who rose smoothly, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Vincent straightened, his fists clenching, ready to double down. "She's a suspect," he began, but the manager cut him off, thrusting a hand up. "Save it. I just got a call from the FAA priority line. They're faxing over something about her. You, officer, better have a damn good reason for this circus." He turned to Lena, his tone softening slightly. "Ma'am, you got ID?" Lena nodded, pulling her driver's license from her pocket, the real one this time, not the alias. "Lena Harper," she said, handing it over. "Check your fax. You'll see who I am." The manager took it, squinting, then hustled off with a deputy to the tiny terminal building, leaving the other deputy, a broad-shouldered woman with a no-nonsense Dorito, watch Vincent. The cabin fell into a restless hush, broken only by the patter of rain and the occasional ping of phones as passengers texted furiously. The teenage boy leaned over, whispering to his neighbor, "This is going viral, check X, it's already up." Lena caught the words, her stomach tightening. She hadn't wanted this spotlight, not yet, but Vincent had forced her hand. She met his gaze, her eyes blazing with a quiet fury that made him shift uncomfortably. Minutes later, the manager returned, his clipboard now cradling a damp fax sheet, the Horizon Air logo stark against the smudged ink. He stared at it, then at Lena, his mouth falling open. You're the CEO?" His voice cracked, disbelief threading through it. He thrust the paper at the deputies. "Look, contract, signature, the works. She's legit." The female deputy snatched it, scanning the page, then turned to Vincent with a look that could melt steel. "You dragged us out here for this?" Harassing the head of the airline. She stepped closer, her hand resting on her cuffs. "Explain yourself, officer, fast." Vincent's face drained of color, his mouth working soundlessly. "Two had a tip," he stammered, clinging to his crumbling lie. "She was acting suspicious, too calm, too black." Lena interjected, her voice sharp enough to slice through the excuses. She stepped forward, her presence filling the cabin like a tidal wave. "You've got no tip, no evidence, just your own bias. You tore my ticket, searched me twice, and chased me onto this plane because I didn't fit your idea of who belongs here. Admit it." The words hung heavy, a guillotine poised to fall. Passengers erupted, cheers, shouts, a woman yelling, "Say it, you coward!" Vincent flinched, his bravado collapsing under the weight of a dozen accusing stares. The deputy grabbed his arm, twisting it behind him. "That's enough. You're coming with us, FAA's already on this, and Atlanta PD's gonna hear about it." "Wait," Vincent protested, struggling as the cuffs clicked shut. "You can, this is a mistake." But his pleas drowned in the roar of approval from the cabin. The teenage boy thrust his phone up, capturing Vincent's humiliation as the deputies hauled him down the aisle, his boots dragging against the carpet. The captain turned to Lena, his face a mix of respect and regret. "Miss Harper, I'm sorry this shouldn't have happened. We'll get you to Chicago, no charge, soon as we refuel." Lena nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Thank you," she said, then addressed the passengers, her voice steady but resonant. "I'm Lena Harper, CEO of Horizon Air. I fly like this to make sure everyone's treated right. Today I wasn't, but I promise you we're fixing this." Applause broke out, raw and heartfelt, as she sat back down, the weight of her words settling over the cabin like a vow. Outside, Vincent was shoved into a sheriff's cruiser, rain pelting his face as the door slammed shut. His radio crackled uselessly, his career slipping away with every mile the plane had flown. Back in the terminal, the manager handed Lena her fax documents, muttering, "Never seen anything like this." She took them, her mind already racing ahead. Naomi would be fielding calls, the video would hit the news, and Vincent's reckoning was just beginning. As the plane taxied back for refueling, Lena's phone buzzed, a flood of alerts. The video was live, trending under Skyway Showdown, with captions screaming, "Racist cop busts its owned." She closed her eyes, the storm's rumble fading into the distance. This wasn't how she'd planned to reveal herself, but the truth was out now, a blazing beacon she couldn't dim. Vincent had lit the match, and the fire was about to consume him while Lena, forged in its heat, would rise stronger than ever. The storm had passed by the time Horizon Air Flight 192 touched down at Chicago O'Hare, its passengers spilling into the terminal with a story that would echo far beyond the runway. Lena Harper stepped off the plane, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her face a mask of resolve tempered by exhaustion. The air buzzed with whispers, travelers craning their necks, some snapping photos as she passed. Her phone vibrated relentlessly, a cascade of notifications lighting up the screen. News alerts, texts from Naomi, and a flood of social media tags under Skyway Showdown. The teenage boy's video had ignited the internet, over 1 million views in hours, Vincent Crowe's snarling face plastered across every platform, his downfall captured in grainy, unfiltered glory. Lena didn't need to watch it to know what it showed. Her standing tall, his cuffs snapping shut, and a plane full of witnesses cheering for justice. Back in Atlanta, Vincent sat in a holding cell at the sheriff's station, the damp chill of his uniform clinging to his skin. His badge lay confiscated on a desk somewhere, his radio silent, his world reduced to the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of keys. The deputies had grilled him for an horno tip existed, no record of any threat, just a flimsy lie he'd spun to justify his obsession. His phone, seized as evidence, buzzed with missed calls from his captain, his union rep, and a dozen furious colleagues who'd seen the video. Captain Hargrove's voice echoed in his memory from an earlier call. "You've humiliated us, Crowe. You're done." Vincent stared at the concrete wall, denial warring with dread. He'd been so sure she was guilty, sure his instincts were right. Now that certainty was ash, and the flames were spreading. By noon, the story had erupted into a national scandal. News vans swarmed Hartsfield-Jackson, reporters shouting over each other for soundbites. "Racist cop detains airline's worst off flight in handcuffs," screamed the headlines. Civil rights groups descended, megaphones blaring demands for Vincent's firing, and a full investigation into airport security practices. On X, the hashtag Justice for Lena trended alongside viral clips, influencers dissecting Vincent's every move, his torn ticket tantrum, his mid-flight meltdown. A local activist tweeted, "This isn't just one bad cop, it's a system that lets him thrive. Time's up." The public's outrage was a tidal wave, and Vincent was drowning in it. Lena, meanwhile, stood in a quiet O'Hare lounge, her team on speakerphone from Horizon Air's Atlanta headquarters. Naomi's voice crackled through, urgent but steady. "Boss, the board's freaking out, PR's a mess, but the public's on your side. What's the play?" Lena paced, the skyline glinting through the window, her mind racing. She hadn't wanted these a viral spectacle. Her face splashed across screens, but Vincent had cracked open a wound she couldn't ignore. She'd seen the stats. Complaints from black travelers, brushed off incidents, a pattern of bias she'd vowed to fix. This wasn't just her fight anymore. "Schedule a press conference," she said finally, her voice firm. "Tomorrow, Atlanta. I'll speak full transparency. We're not hiding from this." Her PR manager Jamal chimed in hesitant. "Lena, this could tank our stock or boost it." "You sure?" She smiled faintly, a spark igniting in her chest. "I'm sure. We're turning this into something bigger." The next day, Lena faced a sea of cameras in a sleek conference room overlooking Atlanta's skyline, her navy blazer crisp against the chaos of the past 48 hours. Flashes popped, reporters jostled, and a hush fell as she stepped to the podium. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, resonant. "I'm Lena Harper, CEO of Horizon Air. 2 days ago, I was racially profiled, harassed, and detained by an airport officer on my own flight. He tore my ticket, searched me without cause, and chased me into the sky because I didn't fit his idea of who belongs. I'm here to say, that ends now." The room erupted in murmurs, but she pressed on. "This isn't just about me. It's about every passenger who's been targeted, dismissed, or dehumanized. Horizon Air stands for dignity for everyone. Today I'm launching Fly Fair, a nationwide initiative bias training for all staff, passenger advocacy hotlines, and partnerships with airports to root out profiling. We'll lead, or we'll step aside." Applause thundered raw and electric as she locked eyes with the crowd. "Officer Crowe thought he could break me. He didn't. And we won't let this break anyone else." Across town, Vincent watched the broadcast from his cramped apartment, the TV flickering in the dim light. His badge was gone, fired that morning after a blistering internal review. The investigation had unearthed more fake tips, exaggerated reports, a trail of stops targeting black and brown travelers. Lawsuits loomed. Lena's legal team was circling, and others were joining, their stories spilling out in the wake of her stand. His phone buzzed with hate mail, his name a punchline on late-night shows. He flicked off the screen, grabbed his keys, and drove into the night, the weight of his choices crushing him. His house would go next, legal fees piling up, no job in sight. Karma had arrived, swift and unyielding, a mirror he couldn't escape. Weeks later, Lena boarded another flight incognito again, though her anonymity was thinner now. Horizon Air's stock had soared, customers flooding back with praise for her courage. Fly Fair rolled out nationwide, workshops humming at airports, her face on billboards with the tagline, "Every wing lifts us all." One day at a small gate, a young black woman hesitated, fumbling her pass. Lena stepped up, her voice soft. "Need help?" The woman's eyes widened, recognition dawning. "You're her, thank you," she whispered, tears brimming. Lena smiled, guiding her forward, a quiet victory in every step. Vincent faded into obscurity, A cautionary tale whispered in precincts, the cop who flew too high and crashed too hard. Lena soared higher, her mission sharpened by the fire he'd lit. The sky stretched wide before her, a canvas of possibility, and she vowed to paint it fair, one flight, one fight at a time. Months had slipped by since the storm-tossed night at Hartsfield-Jackson, but its echoes still rippled across the nation. Lena Harper stood on the tarmac of a bustling Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, the late afternoon sun glinting off the sleek fuselage of a Horizon Air jet. She wore a tailored blazer, now no more faded jeans, but her eyes still carried that quiet fire, a blend of resolve and compassion forged in the crucible of Vincent Crowe's prejudice. Around her a small crowd gathered. Airline staff, local reporters, and a handful of activists clutching signs that read, "Fly fair for all." Today marked the launch of Horizon Air's first fully trained equity crew, pilots, attendants, and ground staff who'd completed the rigorous anti-bias program Lena had poured her heart into. The plane's side bore a new logo, a pair of wings cradling a globe, with the words "Every journey matters" etched beneath. As cameras flashed, Lena stepped to a microphone, her voice cutting through the hum of jet engines. "When I started this, I wanted Horizon Air to be a place where everyone feels seen," she said, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "That night, when an officer tried to tear me down, it wasn't just my fight. It was yours too. Today we're not just flying planes. We're lifting a promise. Dignity, equality, safety for every passenger, every time." Applause erupted, a wave of hands rising in solidarity. A young girl in the crowd, her braids bouncing, held up a drawing of Lena in a cape, labeled Sky Hero. Lena smiled, her chest tightening with a pride she hadn't expected to feel. The Fly Fair initiative had spread like wildfire. Airports from Seattle to Miami adopted its training, their security teams now shadowed by oversight boards to catch the Vincent Crowes before they struck. Horizon Air's passenger numbers soared, travelers flocked to a brand that stood for something, their loyalty a quiet rebellion against the old ways. Lena's face graced magazine covers, her story taught in business schools as a case study in leadership under fire. But she hadn't stopped moving. She still flew incognito sometimes, slipping into coach with a baseball cap pulled low, listening to chatter, watching her crews, ensuring the promise held. On one such flight, a gate agent recognized her mid-apology for a delay, stammering, "Miss Harper, I didn't know." Lena just laughed, clapping his shoulder. "Keep doing right, that's all I ask." Across the country, Vincent Crowe's life had unraveled into a shadow of itself. He sat in a dimly lit diner off a Georgia highway, the air thick with grease and regret. His once crisp uniform was swapped for a faded jacket, his broad shoulders hunched over a cold coffee. The lawsuits had gutted him. Lena's team settled for a public apology and a hefty donation to civil rights groups, but other passengers he'd targeted piled on, their stories spilling out like a dam breaking. His house was gone, sold to cover legal fees. His name, a curse whispered in law enforcement circles. No precinct would touch him, not after the internal review exposed years of fabricated tips, all aimed at black and brown travelers. The Atlanta PD had paid a steep price too, forced into a federal consent decree, their training overhauled under a microscope. Vincent stared at the cracked Formica tabletop, replaying that night, the torn ticket, the cuffs, Lena's unwavering gaze. He tried to apologize once, a shaky voicemail left on Horizon Air's hotline. "I didn't mean, I messed up, okay?" It went unanswered, buried in a flood of calls praising Lena. Now, a TV above the counter flickered to her Dallas speech, her words slicing through the diner's hum. "We're lifting a promise." Vincent's gut twisted, a bitter cocktail of shame and defiance. He'd thought he was untouchable, a guardian of order. Instead, he'd been the chaos, and the world had moved on without him. He tossed a crumpled bill on the table and shuffled out, the highway stretching endless before him, a man unmoored, chasing a redemption he might never find. Back in Dallas, Lena wrapped up the event, shaking hands, posing for photos. As the crowd thinned, an older black woman approached, her eyes glistening. "I flew last week," she said, her voice trembling. "First time in years I wasn't scared at the gate on the plane." "You did that." Lena clasped her hands, emotion swelling in her throat. "We did that," she corrected gently. "Together." That night, Lena sat in her hotel room, the city's lights twinkling beyond the glass. Her phone buzzed, a text from Naomi. FAA just greenlit fly fare for all major carriers. You're a legend, boss. She leaned back, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she'd held. The fight wasn't over. Bias lingered. Systems creaked, but the tide was turning. She thought of Vincent, a fleeting shadow in her mind, his downfall a warning etched in stone. Then she thought of that girl with the drawing, the woman at the gate, the countless faces she'd never meet but whose journey she'd shaped. The next morning, Lena boarded a flight home to Atlanta, slipping into seat 12B, her cap pulled low. The plane lifted off, the familiar rush of ascent washing over her. She gazed out at the endless sky, a canvas of blue and gold, and felt something subtly a piece born of purpose. Vincent had tried to clip her wings, but instead, he'd given her a reason to soar higher, to carry others with her. The world below shrank away, and Lena Harper flew on, a beacon of change in a sky she'd fought to make fair for everyone. And so, the tale of Lena Harper and Vincent Crowe lands not with a crash, but with a smooth touchdown that leaves us all a little wiser. Picture this. Lena's out there still flying under the radar, pun intended, making sure your next flight doesn't come with a side of profiling. Vincent? Well, he's probably flipping burgers somewhere, muttering, "I could have been a hero if that ticket hadn't fought back." Karma's got a wicked sense of humor, doesn't it? It's like the universe looked at Vincent and said, "Buddy, you picked the wrong CEO to mess with. Should be stuck to chasing lost luggage." But let's bring this home to 2025, where we're all scrolling X, dodging storms, literal and social, and hoping our flights don't end up as viral disasters. Lena's story isn't just a wild ride, it's a mirror. Ever been judged for how you look, where you're going, or who you are? Yeah, us too. And Vincent? He's that guy we've all met, the one who thinks he's the main character but ends up the punchline. The lesson here? Don't be a Vincent. Check your biases at the gate, folks, because the only thing worse than missing your flight is missing the point. So here's a question for you, dear listener. What's one tiny thing you could do today to make someone's journey in a plane, at work, or just down the street a little fairer? Drop your answer in the comments. We're dying to hear it. Oh, and while you're at it, don't fly away just yet. Hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this coming your way, packed with drama, heart, and maybe a few laughs. Because if Lena taught us anything, it's that every takeoff's a chance to rise above. See you in the skies.